All right, so let's fast forward here. So you've come through this time. You're now covering the right. It's 2024. We are now in the third week of January. As we're recording this, the Iowa caucuses will have happened, so we don't know the outcome yet. How do you see this year rolling out as you're studying and covering Trump, DeSantis, Haley, all of them, Mike Johnson? What does the right look like in 2024?
All right. In Congress, they're totally just going to keep throwing speaker after speaker out the moment that someone comes into office and goes, wait, I need to be kind of pragmatic in order to keep the government running. Right now, the House conservative hardliners are really, really pissy at Mike Johnson, who's like ostensibly one of them, but keeps coming back to them with bills that maintain provisions and funding for things that they just like fundamentally dislike. Doesn't go far enough on the border, for instance, or they continue to put any money whatsoever into IRS funding. And there is a real chance that they actually do use the motion to vacate on him just because he's sort of a traitor to them.
And as I said before, betrayal is the ultimate sin for these people.
Yeah, at least with, they didn't like McCarthy, but I think most of them were okay keeping him in because he was a really good...
They didn't like him, but they knew him.
They knew him. They knew exactly what he was. They knew he was transactional. They knew he didn't really believe anything, but they knew that...
And he raised him a bunch of money.
Yeah, but he would get things done, and that would be fine, and they could complain about it, and he could also just say, screw you guys, I'm the speaker, I do what I want. And then the moment that the motion to vacate did come up, my reporting indicated that a lot of the people who ended up voting for McCarthy's removal, other than Matt Gaetz and Nancy Mace and maybe Eli Crane, a lot of them were motivated by the fact that their bases back home really, really, really wanted them to stick it to Washington. If the MTV hadn't come up, I'm sure they continue to rail about it, but also be privately okay with not having to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, because also, we have these 18 Republican members who live in districts that Biden won in 20, right? And they have to keep taking these votes on McCarthy, on, Jim Jordan as speaker, now as Mike Johnson as speaker. It ain't getting better after Mike Johnson. And I'm also curious, just as an aside, Mike Johnson was a backbencher. I mean, do you think he walks into the speaker's office every morning, or he gets picked up by his detail and whatever, and he's sort of like, what the F did I get myself into? I mean, it very well could be that he's in over his head because of all the things. I don't care how many times he says Jesus told him this was going to happen. I don't believe he really believes that. That he's just like, oh, God, I actually have a job. I'm a constitutional officer now, and these idiots don't get it.
That has to be on his mind. I would confidently say that is on his mind. And it is much easier to be an ideologue who can say all sorts of hard right things as long as you don't have to pay the consequences for it. But the moment that the rubber hits the road, and I think I've seen this with every conservative who's ever tried to ascend to a position of power, their ideology has to take a backseat to getting things done. And I don't know, and it really depends on whether they're able to keep that, hew to that ideology.
So may I just tell you, I attended the University of Texas at Austin, and I was never a college Republican. And because, as long as I worked in the party I grew up in, I was not really a party guy. And that exact kind of thing that you're talking about happened every semester on the campus of UT with the college Republicans. They'd elect a new president at the beginning of the fall semester. Everybody would love this person for about a month. Then they would hate that person and spend the rest of the semester getting rid of them until they found their new leader to start the second semester, the spring semester. And by the end of the school year, Tina, that person was out of a gig too. And it went that way every freaking year. And I was like, I don't have anything to learn from you people. I don't care that much. I worked for George. I worked for the governor. So did I really need this anyway? And that ethos starts at the beginning. right? The purity tests are never passed. They're always failed.
I mean, I don't know whether it's purely a Republican impulse. Like, we were just talking about John Fetterman undergoing the same process right now. I think the difference, though, is that conservatives, particularly Tea Party ideologues, are more willing to use the nuclear option. And
100%.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that, like, I'm not sure, like, Jim Jordan, I think, is probably the most trusted hardliner among the Republican right now. Obviously, the moderates really hate him. The Democrats, of course, consider him like anathema. But the moment he has to come out of, like, say he got elected speaker, the moment he emerges from a room with a bill that gives the Democrats something of what they want, he's going to face really intense scrutiny from enough members of that hard right who, unfortunately, in the makeup of this Congress, can get rid of him. Like, it's literally one person, and they hold a 2-seat majority at this point. And but that also goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier with the way that Republicans are good at hijacking the rules and breaking things. Like, they have studied this long enough to know what lever to pull to make everything grind to a screeching halt or, like, veer off in their direction.
I used to attend these meetings, of moderate Republicans, and the listeners have heard me tell this before, and, they'd try and figure out, how do we get rid of Trump but save the party? And Rick and I and others would be like, they're one and the same. You can't kill one without killing the other. And they'd be like, no, that's not true. And I'm like, you guys got to understand, like, the regular world is playing chess, and Trump comes along and eats the pieces. It's not the same thing you're used to. Now you're looking at an empty board going, what the hell am I supposed to do now? And most people just sit there with their mouths agape. And that's how this guy and so much of this stuff has happened, is that when the time has come to say no more, right? Okay, this time we really mean it. Okay, this time we really mean it. They don't really mean it because they don't know what to do. And oftentimes it's, sort of the grab them by the belt ethos, which is you got to stay in these people's faces all the time and see, okay, are you really willing to go through this? I think unfortunately we really have our answer for a lot of people on the right, from the top all the way down to the types that, showed up on January 6th 3 years ago, which is, oh yeah, we're really willing to do this stuff.
It's a cycle that just keeps happening and happening and happening. And man, it's been an interesting process going through all of these interviews for the book, because sometimes I just face this wall of, like, disbelief that the things I'm saying are true and are happening. And I'll put it this way. I was telling my editors at Politico that there was a massive likelihood of political violence going into January 6th. And they were like, why are you covering this? This all seems to be like stuff on the internet. And I was finding ways to cover it in a way that connected it to the White House and the orders coming from the president, because I was, by job title, a White House reporter. And the moment that, during COVID, 3 people tweet online, hey, maybe hydroxychloroquine can cure COVID, to the moment it, like, leaps out of Trump's mouth, like, this crazy internet stuff becomes actionable policy that leads to people dying. But
it jumps the air gap.
And there was still this disbelief that Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keeper head, going on Alex Jones and saying, we got to take our country back. This is unconstitutional. We as sovereign citizens have the right to do whatever it takes. When you have that ideology come in and aim itself at the federal government, things are going to go bad. But and here's something that I don't think is covered very well or deeply understood. One, my editors were like, okay, fine. You can go to the Capitol on January 6th and interview people who are there to harass lawmakers. But 2, I went to the Capitol in advance the night before, and I was scouting out security because I figured, the Capitol security should have really good threat assessment, and it was just like fences. Like, I've been to the Capitol for inaugurations, big security events, and there was way more security to even approach the Capitol than there was that day. And so I was thinking, like, I mean, if the Capitol Police, with all their resources, say that it's okay, then I don't know, maybe I'm overhyping it. I was still prepared going in, but the back of my mind was like, it'll be fine, sure. And I file and I start texting with my editor, like, what should I do if things get crazy? Because there's an idea that I have, a scenario I think of, where counter protesters come in and then there's mass violence between Antifa and Proud Boys, or Black Lives Matter and Proud Boys. And he goes, you should just go into the Capitol. The security there is ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And
right.
Thankfully I was outside the Capitol on everything locked down. But oh my God, if I listened to that advice, I would have been so screwed.
No, and I think that's, to as we start to wrap up here, Tina, I think this is a big part of why we are where we are, is the unwillingness or inability to have the imagination, frankly, right? I mean, we started saying in the summer of 2020 that the election won't be over on November 7th or whatever it was. It won't be over until Joe Biden takes the oath of office on January 20th, 2021, because we didn't have any confidence whatsoever the guy was going to go quietly. And if you'd just been listening to him and taking him seriously and literally, you would have known that this wasn't a surprise, right? The manner of it, the tactics of it, the place of it, maybe we couldn't have figured that out, but people like you and many other journalists who understood the signals and the online stuff, like understood. I mean, Steve Bannon said, strap in, tomorrow's going to be something you can't possibly understand. Like, you listen to his show, first of all, it's brain melting, but like he tells you, like, guys like this, they tell you, movements like this, they always tell you. And for whatever reason, whether or not it's Democrats, the mainstream media, or individual Americans, either can't believe it or don't want to believe it, but that willful ignorance has led us to the precipice, Tina, from my perspective and our collective perspective, to a very dark place.
Sometimes I do feel like I'm cursed with knowledge. But yeah, no, people do keep asking me like how it is that I can continue to report on the right. And thankfully for me, I find it simple just because I already know the backstory and I can speak the language and know the culture and know exactly like what means what and who.
Some of these people were my best friends.
Yeah. The thing that I was recommended to do, and this was when I was ranting about this to my therapist, who also does appear in the book, was, look, you're always going to run into people who don't believe you, and it's because you're telling them these things that they find horrifying and unbelievable, and they will just not want to believe you, and the only thing you can do is just keep going with it.
Right. Listen, that's why I call myself your friendly neighborhood Cassandra, right? Like, it may not be the thing you want to hear, and if you don't believe it, that's at your peril. But like, we're out here for a reason. Tina, tell us where we can find you on social media, if you still dare to tread there. Where can we find your work at Puck? And tell us a little bit more about your book and all the things you're doing around it.
Instagram is the last Nguyen, as in there is multiple Nguyen's and I am the last one. Twitter/X is Tina_Nguyen. I recently learned that book TikTok was a thing, so now I am on TikTok. Literally have a separate phone just to post that stuff so I don't run into security risks. But that's Tina Nguyen Writes. Do I have other social media? LinkedIn, I guess. Tina Nguyen.
Nerd. I
don't have a Strava account, unfortunately. No one can track where I'm running.
Where can we find you at Puck?
Puck, literally, I'm on the front page. Tina Nguyen, author. We also have a newsletter that has all of the Washington and political coverage called The Best and the Brightest. And so every week it's me, Julia Ioffe, who writes about foreign policy, Tara Palmieri, who really understands the Washington culture, Peter Hamby, and Abby Livingston, who is a much deeper reporter on Congress than I ever will be. I just know how to talk to the people who know how to break it.
And you guys have really assembled an incredible collection of reporters across your verticals, whether or not that's politics, finance, tech, Hollywood. If you want the tea that's being spilled, Puck is the place you're going to find.
Oh, we got the best tea, the hottest, tastiest tea. And the MAGA Diaries is wherever books are sold. And there is an audiobook version coming out, which I narrate. and it's fun. And yeah, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local independent bookstore, what have you. I'll probably be doing a bunch of television on it, depending what happened with Donald Trump yesterday in Iowa. I might be on TV telling you in a shorter but hopefully pithy way exactly how MAGA is going to start stomping all over America.
Right.
And then I'm going to go and make soup and just sit quietly in the corner and think some more and then call more people.
Awesome. As always, thanks. And again, guys, the book is The MAGA Diaries. Go out and get it. It is out now. As always, gang, you can find me on Twitter at Reed Galen, on Instagram and Threads at Reed_Galen_LP, and on Substack at The Homefront. Tina Nguyen, congratulations on the book. Come back and see us. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
To everybody else, we'll see you next time. Thanks again to everyone for listening. Be sure to follow and subscribe to The Lincoln Project on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or however you listen. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review. To connect with us, follow us on Twitter at Project Lincoln, and for more information on our movement, to join our mailing list, subscribe to our newsletter, or make a contribution to our efforts, visit lincolnproject.us. If you want to message the podcast directly, please send an email to podcast@lincolnproject.us. And if you want to personally join the fight to save our nation's democracy, visit jointheunion.us. For The Lincoln Project, I'm Reed Galen. I'll see you on the next episode.